Hello, everyone. My name is Riley, and I'm here with my co-host Matt. Welcome to Quadrant for Politics, the podcast where we discuss news and politics from a conservative and libertarian perspective. However, we are welcoming two people from all over our political compass. That's where we get our name, Quadrant for Politics, because we are in the fourth quadrant of the political compass. Let's see. Today's date is October 26, 2018. So if you're listening after that date, we do not know any of the future news. I apologize about that. And as always, the preferable method of listening to this podcast is on SoundCloud. We pay a premium for that, and it's also just the easiest way to listen because you can put your phone on sleep mode and still listen to it, whereas on YouTube you have to leave it open unless you're one of those rich people who can afford YouTube Red. Let's see here. Today's podcast is first we're going to go through some comments that we got about our last episode where we discussed the death penalty. We got some really good comments. I love comments. Then we're going to do our grab bag question that we do every week. And finally, our main discussion for this podcast is the 2018 midterms. They're out November 6th, and the question is it going to be a red wave or a blue wave? Who's going to win? As the Democrats are referring to the blue wave now, they're calling it the rainbow wave. What do you think of that, Matt?
I have not heard that.
You haven't heard that?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, they're calling it, it was on Samantha Bee's show. They were like, the blue wave is actually a rainbow wave because there's like a few transgender people running. I don't know.
I don't really care.
It's gay, anyway. Literally.
Yeah.
How are you doing today, Matt?
I am really excited because we both like talking about ideas, but government and the setup thereof is something I'm really passionate about. Not passionate about, sorry. I really enjoy it. If I could set government up a little differently, I would, but I really love election time. Elections are like my Super Bowl. I always tell football fans, hey, my Super Bowl comes once every 4 years, so I don't want to hear about, your team losing because it doesn't matter in real life. But anyway.
Well, it's every 2 years, right?
It's even
this is a midterm. This is one of the minor ones.
It's even every year if you consider it. But yeah, the good ones, though, are every 4 years, the ones that get people real riled up. But anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be a good show. So first off, we are going to go through our comments, but just one thing, we bring up things from the past show. I think last time we recorded it was the day before the Kavanaugh confirmation, and I think we pretty much predicted exactly how it would come down because at that point all the senators had said it the way they would vote. It was the closest vote in 100 years, or over 100 years.
Really?
Clarence Thomas was confirmed by 52 to 48.
And that was the last time there was a sexual scandal, right?
Exactly. And then Kavanaugh was confirmed by 50 to 48. The way it would have actually turned out was 51 to 49, but one of the Montana senators was at his daughter's wedding. So Lisa Murkowski, the Republican who was going to vote no, voted present. And then one Democrat also crossed lines to vote with the Republicans, and that was Manchin of West Virginia. And then pretty much we're not going to have any further discussion on the Kavanaugh hearings or him on the court, but I'm sure it will come up today as we talk about what the seats are going to do in the next Tuesday or two. So, yeah.
Good deal. Okay, so you want to go over the comments from our last episode?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so on the last episode, we discussed the death penalty. Go back and listen to the episode if you want to hear our full discussion on it. But in general, I am in support of the death penalty, and Matt is completely against the death penalty within our own restrictions of that. And we got some comments about it, and let's go over them.
Okay, and then just in general, what we find interesting about it is that Riley is a libertarian. Generally, libertarians are against the death penalty. I'm a conservative. We're generally for it. On this one, we're switched. So
yeah. So let's see. I'll go ahead and read these, and we're going to go through them pretty quick because we did get a lot of them. But we'll do quick responses for all of them. Let's see here from Megas Basilius. Thank you so much for your comment. It says, I agree with Christopher Hitchens' argument that the state should not have the power to kill its own citizens. It can take away civil liberties, ask the citizen to defend it, or use lethal force in self-defense. But we should draw the lines of state power right before death. What do you think of that?
I think that pretty much says it pretty well. The question, and I think it comes up later, is where do you draw that line? But, like I said, we'll discuss that further down in the comments. But I think that's something I think is pretty much on the spot for me.
Yeah, I've never heard of Christopher Hitchens before. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I have. It's like one of those tip of the tongue things,
Yeah.
tip of my brain. Like, I read something from him just the other day, but like now I'm blanking on it. So
I'm not sure who.
Wish I would have saw that before the podcast. But
No, it's all good. My response to this one is going to be the same as my response to quite a few of these. Is that yes, it is the government who is in the end pulling the trigger, but we have a system where it's a jury of your peers who's making that decision, and from my understanding, the jury decides if the person should get the death penalty or not.
in every state except, I believe, Alabama, which the judge can overrule the jury.
Yeah.
Which I'm really surprised.
Can't the judge overrule the jury in every state?
No, in most, if not every state, it has to be a full consensus from the jury. So if even one of the 12 people say life,
yeah,
then it's life. Maybe some others are different, but I think they're all that way. I know there was a pretty popular case in Alabama where for a black man, the jury said 7 to 5 life sentence, and the judge overturned it, and it turned out the guy was not guilty, or the evidence wasn't that strong. So anyway.
Well, yeah, that like I said, that's my defense. I think that the jury is infallible. I think it's just such a good way to have the system. The next one is, yeah, that's where I stand. At the end of the day, I don't want a federal or state government to have the power to kill citizens. The slippery slope and such like that, essentially saying that if you give the government a little bit, they'll take a lot and they'll start just killing people left and right.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to go into it deeply, but that's kind of my same thought on, because we've talked about government rights, and every time they take a right from the citizen, also though, when we give rights, the government can tend to overdo it. And one of these days we'll talk about assisted suicide, and that's kind of how I feel with that, is if we give assisted suicide to the people, it's going to then start being used for people who are just generally depressed or whatnot. So I think this is one of those give an inch, take a mile type deals.
We can, assisted suicide is a long discussion.
Yeah, we're not going to get that.
That comment came from Tonbar. Thanks for your comment. Thank you guys, everyone, for your comments. We love getting these comments. Let's see, this one's from Chef R89. It says, although I think it's an acceptable form of punishment for certain crimes, the fact that we've put innocent people to death in this country before has made me believe we should abolish it. I would prefer to have it available as a form of punishment in select cases, for example, the Boston bomber or serial killer types. But I'm not sure where you draw the line, and I would want it to be something requiring the highest possible levels of proof. My quick response to this one is, as I stated in our discussion in the last episode, I think that the guilt should only lie on the jury if the person be like. We have a system in this country where we have court cases, and like your time to get the evidence is then that's your time, and if it comes out later that you were innocent, it's like too late, buddy, kind of thing.
Yeah, but there have been cases
and it's up to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt. That is their job.
There have been cases where the prosecutor's been drunk. There have been cases where the prosecution suppressed evidence that pointed to the defendant's innocence.
Well, in that case, I mean, that can be, I don't know, that doesn't necessarily have to be a murder charge, but it could be a manslaughter charge.
My brief response to this would be that a form of, let's see, everything is supposed to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So it means, unless like an angel literally floated into your house and killed somebody and then laid your fingerprints out all over, like, besides that, if it all points to you and it is you, the jury should reasonably reach that conclusion, unless you were like framed by the supernatural, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there is no special level of higher proof. I don't think so, according to the law. And if you're found guilty and sentenced to death, and you're found guilty and sentenced to life, and in any case you're not guilty, in both cases you've been wronged. One of the things is it's just the finality of the death penalty. But still, there have been people who've spent 40 or 50 years on death row who didn't commit the crime. But anyway, that's just my response to that one.
Let's see. Marquis of Thorns said, here's one thing I never understood about American conservatives. Sorry for the generalization. They are so adamant that government is a dysfunctional mess, yet they feel comfortable to give them the power to choose between life or death. I trust my government a lot, but I wouldn't dream giving it that authority. Because if it screws up, I myself was complicit in the murder of an innocent citizen. I'll reply to this one first, because I am one of those people who believes that the government is a dysfunctional mess, to put it lightly. However, my defense of the death penalty is the jury, of course, like I said, is going to be my main response to all these comments, but also it costs so much to keep people in jail, and I know that you say it costs so much to put people to death. I think that once they're convicted and they get the death penalty, I think that whole process should be shortened and made quicker to save us money.
Which we would have to then end due process, though.
I think the due process ends when the jury's made its
That's not
verdict.
no.
Well,
due process means you get your appeals, you get your chance to review your case, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but that shouldn't take very long. The government moves so slowly. That's why I think it's a dysfunctional mess. I think that it needs to be cleaned up quite a bit.
Which, again, not the point of this, but why not, instead of just executing the 50 people a year we do in the U.S., just give them life sentences? But anyway, continue.
Let me see here. He says, I myself, he would feel complicit in the murder of an innocent citizen. It might just be because I'm a heartless bastard, but I think that the guilt should only be on the jury if the person turns out innocent after they've been murdered.
And so what happens to the jury then?
They just feel guilty.
They just get okay. So
they have to live the rest of their life knowing
there's
that, and then they can make YouTube videos saying, "Man, I feel so bad that I put that person to death." And then future juries after that will be like, "Man, we got to take this shit seriously."
Well,
I think that the guilt alone would sway a jury to not do the death sentence.
The guilt 25, 30 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that are on death row now, and the jury's looking back on it and saying, "If I could, I would change my vote." But they don't get to change their vote years later. So
no, yeah, you don't get to change your vote after you made the decision, but it will be a lesson to all future juries, you know.
Yeah, that's gonna work real well. Anyway, so I'm a little concerned with. I trust my government a lot. I trust them enough. I don't give them that much credit, but I also wouldn't dream of giving them that authority. But they do have it for right now. So one interesting thing is the Eighth Amendment, which is the amendment that protects people from cruel and unusual punishment, is the only amendment where it's allowed to change based off time. So the left side of the court usually writes laws based on how they feel they should be, as the conservatives uphold it based on how it is, and that is a little bit biased, but that's my belief. But the Eighth Amendment is different in the fact that if the Supreme Court or whatever body was to finally say, this exceeds cruel and unusual, which I think it does, giving a person a certain day and saying, we're going to kill you. If they were to decide that, then it would all of a sudden go away. But
let's see, next comment. Okay, I got his name. This guy's name is Darth Knight Nericus. Darth Knight Nericus, that's a pretty cool name. He says, the only acceptable use of the death penalty is for war criminals / those who have committed crimes against humanity. What do you think about that one, Matt?
I, in general, agree. So I am, when I say I'm against the death penalty, I'm against the government systematically putting its own citizens to death, regardless of what the crime was. However, the exception I have made would be if, like when Bush ordered the assassination of Saddam Hussein, Obama ordered the assassination of Osama bin Laden. Those are reasonable things. Those are executive decisions by the president. And they're also, usually they're going to be reasonable. We're usually taking out pretty bad dictators. And one thing I would be okay with the death penalty is treason that results in death. That's kind of where I would draw the line. It's a federal crime, treason is, as to where murder is a state crime. But that's not really why. It's because treason is such a high crime. It's pretty much considered the highest of crime, but I'm not saying just treason where some papers get out. I'm saying treason where it actually, causes one or more people to die. But besides that, we use it way too randomly and sporadically. So,
Yeah, I mean, he says he thinks it's only for war criminals and those who have committed crimes against humanity. Um, yeah, crimes against humanity is kind of vague because I would consider rape a crime against humanity, but that's not
I
something I
mean,
would
yeah,
necessarily think
that's
a death penalty for. I think I'm gonna be a real savage here, but I think if you rape someone, I think the best uh, punishment for that is, like getting raped back. Having the government set up one of those, in porn they have those machines with the dildos that automatically go back and forth. Just like put a knife on one of
I've
those and
told you
rape
I
someone
don't
with that.
watch porn to the excess that you do, but we'll get into that in the next one. Not the porn, your opinion. Metsman71 says, I have a hard time understanding how libertarians could support the death penalty. And Metsman71 classifies himself, in other words, he basically says he's a libertarian. I won't say exactly what he says. You are giving the government the power to kill you. Fuck that.
He's a supporter of Gary Johnson. That's fine to say.
Okay, well,
I supported Gary Johnson.
haven't been reading everybody else's descriptions of what they are. But
True.
anyway, so what? How does that work? Because can I tell you how I see it? I
Okay.
think you're just a much more savage libertarian. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I think you have, and I don't mean this offensively, and I think you know I don't, but you have very low regard for life,
mhm.
and you don't see value in it.
Well, I agree with that.
That's
I mean,
very scary to me.
I see value in life. I just less than probably most people, or less than the movies want us to, have view of life. I'm a huge fan of superhero comics and movies, and they value life so much. And half the time I'm reading superhero comics and watching superhero movies, it's like all your problems would be solved if you just killed the Joker, Batman. Just kill the fucking Joker, Batman. It's like. That's how I view life. Is it's not as valuable as everyone else thinks it is.
So,
But
so what would be your answer, I guess?
yeah, my response to this is my libertarianism is small government and taxation is theft. All right, taxation is theft is what I believe. And if you are taxing us to keep these people in prison, that's where my argument is.
All taxation is theft?
All taxation is theft.
Didn't you take a bus to come do this podcast?
Yeah, I want the bus to be privatized because the bus is shit. It's constantly late. Sometimes it doesn't show up. I was on the bus the other day that took a wrong turn, and I was on the bus for 45 minutes going in the wrong direction. So I think taxation is theft. I think my extremist ideas are that the government should be crowdfunded. But I mean, if you're making me pay to keep people in jail for the rest of their lives, that's not something I want to pay for. I don't
that's
think
paying for your safety.
that is
though.
the government putting the gun to my head and saying you have to pay me money so that I can put this person in a cell. Where it's like I'd rather you just put a gun to that person's head and kill them. So
It all comes back to the argument of we have to have some sort of system of order, and you and I disagree on what that is. So I don't think we'll really get to an answer on that one. Let's move on.
Okay, let's see. One-winged rook. That's a hard name to say.
That is.
He says he doesn't vote in his thing.
Yeah.
Which is. What do you think of voting, Matt? Is voting important? Real quick.
I do not think. Well, we're going to talk about voting anyway. So.
Yeah.
I do not think that anybody should have to vote. Some people say that everybody should have to vote. That's absolutely stupid.
Yeah, that's big government.
They also started something in Washington recently where when you go to sign up for certain programs or different
when you
things,
get your license, it's like you automatically sign up.
Yeah, I think you should have to actually state, like, I would like to become a participant in the voting process because otherwise they're just giving it to uneducated people.
I think voting should be easier, but I don't think that everyone should have to vote. I don't even think it's even that valuable. I just think that voting's fun.
But having it is fun, but also, this person here has an opinion on the subject, but they're not voting for the people that are that could be affecting this.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, anyways, I'll read his comment. He says, 1, you need to be convicted by a jury. Oh, I think this is a response to the guy before who said he doesn't understand how libertarians could support the death penalty.
Yeah.
So he says, 1, you need to be convicted by a jury. It is not the government sentencing you to death. It is your peers. 2, without government, you have the right to seek justice for wrongs against you. We collectively have granted the power to government to act as arbitrator of that justice. In lieu of government acting as arbitrator, you would be free to seek your own justice. Thereby, no one should be put to death who not be owed death by justice in lieu of government action. That one was pretty confusing. I apologize.
Well, he's pretty much saying that there's no reason to be worried about putting someone to death if death is the proper sentence.
Let me see. As an aside, I believe the only federal offense worthy of death is treason, with that person admitting guilt in open court. And he says he's more flexible on states. Let's see here. I agree with him about the jury. I like his argument. It is not the government sentencing you to death. It is your peers. I like that one a lot.
But it's a part of the government process, though.
And this one also makes me think his second point here is we're granting the government to act as our arbitrator for the justice. And it's kind of like as someone who's against the death penalty, are you against self-defense? Like, or if someone breaks in your home with a shotgun, points at your face, and you quickly pull out a gun and kill him, should that be legal in your opinion?
Yes.
You think that should be legal? I mean, that's essentially just
to kill the person?
You're the judge, jury, and executioner in that situation.
Well, they trespassed, and you don't know what they're doing there. So
yeah, but if you're against the death penalty, why are you in support of that?
In support of somebody protecting themselves?
Yeah, but protecting themselves by murdering someone else. I mean,
because that's a then and there thing. Nobody's getting protected when you put somebody on death row and then execute them 20 years later, or even in your scenario when we execute them 2 months later. Mm-hmm. Nobody's being protected by that when they could just be put in a cell for the rest of their life. So
okay, I see what you're saying. Do you have a reply to that one at all?
I don't know.
And then this next one was a reply to that guy saying, okay, well, according to our government, this is from Pero Frito. He says, okay, well, according to our government, Snowden was a traitor. Do you think we should kill him? And to which he replied, I didn't really give a reply. But anyways, we want to discuss Snowden. Do you think that Snowden was a traitor, and do you think that he should be killed?
Well, I mean, he kind of did us a favor with letting us know the government was spying on us.
Yeah.
We kind of already know that. I guess I would have to take the government
side. He just confirmed it for us, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. I would have to take the government's side in this one, though, that if you're being entrusted with certain classified documents and then you release them, that is treason or traitorness, whatnot. But however, I did say that my opinion of the death penalty would be treason that leads to death.
Yeah.
And I don't think his treason.
So you think he should go to jail?
I'd leave that to a jury to decide. I mean, it's kind of twofold. I mean, he's exposing a wrong, but he's also doing it the same way, or in a very illegal way, Yeah. But I guess he is a whistleblower, but whistleblower laws are different for private companies and public companies. So I don't have all the information right now to say what should happen.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he should be put to death, and I think that what he did is free speech. I think that this could be an entirely other conversation. But if your level of treason is just telling someone a secret, and letting the secret be known worldwide, I don't think that's I think that should be a part of our free speech. I think that it sounds that come from your mouth if he just said, hey, I work for the government, and I can confirm that they're all spying on you. That just sounds coming from his mouth.
I work for the government, and I can confirm there's going to be a strike on country X tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's something that should be protected by free speech.
Well, I'm not in support of striking other countries. Yeah.
I'm saying if that's what it was, and let's say it was for our defense.
Well, I think it's on the government's fault for trusting that person, but I don't think that person should get in trouble for that.
No, they should, because they've signed and sworn an oath that they are going to keep that information classified for them.
I disagree. I mean, getting fined, sure. I think that even getting fined is too much, but I think no, it's free speech. I value nothing more than free speech. I think that even the smallest, slightest bit on free speech is too much. Slippery slope.
And this is why I'm a little more authoritarian than you, and this is why also Samuel Alito is my favorite Supreme Court justice, because in the case against the Westboro Baptist Church, he's the only one who ruled against them, and he said people trying to mourn their son's funeral who served for the country should be able to do so, free speech doesn't go that far to protect him. So,
well, I mean, this could be a whole nother conversation, but I support. I don't support the Westboro Baptist Church. I'm very much against them, but I support their right to do what they do. As that one quote says, "I hate what you say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it." I love that quote. But the Westboro Baptist Church, quite frankly, those guys are fucking geniuses because they are the most hated people in America. But they win lawsuits left and right, and they are super fucking rich. Like they have made a living for themselves by making people hate them. It's crazy.
All right, next.
This comment is from someone who doesn't really have a name. It's P100123, and he says
P100123.
He says, "Yeah, I like the death penalty for heinous crimes. We need to draw a line if you are a complete savage that cannot live within society." What do you think of that one?
So if you're a complete savage that cannot live within society, I would say that classifies you as insane. There are certain people where we've seen by their brain makeup that they just don't have the ability to decide right and wrong. That qualifies them insane, and that makes them not applicable for the death penalty. And then, far as, yeah, I like the death penalty for heinous crimes. Heinous crimes would have to be defined. There has to be a greater definition for what a heinous crime is, and I think that is something that the courts would even hold up, is that until you define heinous crime, until the laws define heinous crime, you can't, that doesn't qualify. So yeah, that's my argument.
I mean, yeah, I agree with him. What do you think school shooters who, like the guy who killed 59 people in Vegas, he's not a school shooter, but do you think that he should be put to death? If he was still alive, he obviously killed himself.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to cry for any of those people. I'm not going to lose a tear when the government puts them to death.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fine. And for some people, it'll give them closure. For others, they'll have to relive the whole thing over again. So it's pick and choose type thing. But the fact is, we can put him away where nobody's going to see him again, and he's as good as dead, but killing him's not bringing anybody back.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
Okay. This guy, Lone Wolf Sigma 8917, says every nation has it for rapists and terrorists, and I disagree with him. I don't think every nation has it for rapists and terrorists.
No, there's definitely
several nations who don't have the death penalty in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of European countries do not have the death penalty anymore, and that's even for terrorists and rapists. I don't know how rapists and terrorists are comparable because, like, one doesn't even get put to death, like in the United States, and then the other is a mass criminal on a national scale. But in any case, that's just not a factual statement. So next.
And there's a lot of people who support the death penalty for pedophiles. Like they say if you molest little boys or little girls, that you should just be fucking murdered over and over again.
Well,
I see
recently,
a lot of hatred for that.
The state of Louisiana allowed execution for rape of a child 12 years old or younger. And then the Supreme Court, again, stuck their noses somewhere they shouldn't, and they said the death penalty can only be used for first-degree murder cases. Where they got that logic, what laws they looked at, what part of the Constitution, I'm not sure. But, so there are people like that, but I say we can just lock them up and it will be cheaper and the same effect. So,
Alpha Tango Foxtrot with the TRT, he says, my view, yes, at the request of the convicted. This one's an interesting one. He says, look, we all know the government has had many death sentences, quote unquote, overturned by DNA evidence. Well, at least the conviction is overturned. You can't give the person their life back. Because of this, I do not accept the government having the right to decide who lives and dies. However, I believe the convicted should be able to request a death penalty if they so choose. Say I was confronted with multiple life sentences, no parole, for whatever reason, if I say, quote, Your Honor, I would like to request the death penalty. Rather than spend the remaining 40 plus years of my life behind bars, I would rather just end my life now, end quote. Then I should be allowed that option. That's what he thinks. What do you think of that?
I just disagree with this all across the board. First of all, then I should be allowed that option. Why are we giving murderers choices? And in some cases, we do. In some cases, they've fought for the death penalty because they don't want to be in prison forever. But I think they're the last persons who should have a say on what happens. Also, low on my priority list of why we should not have the death penalty is the whole idea of innocence. I think if it was done properly, and if I think we did everything that was actually beyond a reasonable doubt, and if we could trust the prosecutors and we could trust eyewitnesses, if we could say for sure, then we could have a system where the death penalty works. It's just right now there's too many problems, as we've seen. But I think there's some people that could certainly be put to death justly, even though they go to the chair crying that they're innocent, and we know they're not. And then there's other cases that are more questionable. For that reason, because there's so many variables, and because it's supposed to be you're either guilty or you're not, there's not some certain level. Because of that, I would say we get rid of the death penalty. But the whole innocence thing has never really tugged at my heart. It's always just been because of the inconsistency in how it is given out. It's about 10 or 15 counties across the U.S. that, like, I think 90% of the death sentences come from, and it's disproportionate in how it's given out. And biggest of all is it's not something the government should be allowed to do. But that's my opinion on this one. Is that I pretty much disagree with most of it. So
my response to this one, real quick, is that I think that death should be easier for a lot of people. I think, as I stated in the last episode, I think that those suicide boxes that are in Futurama, that are just on the street, I think that those should be a real thing, and I am supportive of people who I think that if you want to end your life, then you should have that right. And I am okay with giving criminals that option. The last comment is from Broke Down. He gave us the link to the innocenceproject.org, and he said their success rate should scare the shit out of people. Personally, I did not go and research this a whole lot, but I think if there's a lot of innocent people being put to death, then I think there's a problem with the system that needs to be fixed. Obviously, I don't think that innocent people should be put to death, but I do think that
the problem's not with execution; it's with the system.
Yeah, I think it's with the system, and I think jury duty is such a disliked thing in society. There's people who don't vote simply because they don't want to be put on the jury duty list, and I think that there needs to be put more pressure on the jury to beyond a reasonable doubt kind of thing. What do you think of that?
Well, like I said, it's like I've said it. You can only have guilty or not guilty. You can't have not guilty, guilty, and then so guilty that we're sure enough that they can be put to death. It's not how the system's designed. It's not how it's supposed to be. As far as Innocence Project, I've read a lot from there, and it does have a lot of things that tug at the heart, especially for us who have a heart. But it's also backed by the ACLU, so it just kind of makes me a little nauseous. But anyway.
That was all of our comments. I just let's do a final word on the death penalty. Real quick, my final word on the death penalty is I am supportive of it. I think it should be saved for people who pretty much murder and above, premeditated murder and above. I think just instant murder is a little bit different, but I think it should be kept in the system. However, if it goes away, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to be too bothered by it. I have my strong opinions on things, but death penalty is not one of those things where I'm going to be hating my country if they decide to never have the death penalty again. And I think in the end, if they want to get rid of the death penalty, I think a suitable option would be to take one of the middle states where there's hardly any population, build 4 giant fucking walls around it, and then just turn it into a place where we dump criminals who are getting a life sentence and just turn it into a battle royale in the middle. And then we can put some cameras in there, make some money off of it, and watching people kill each other.
Okay, shut up. Awesome. That's all stupid. Final word. I think I've made it pretty clear.
You don't support the death penalty
I
at
don't
all?
support it, except I guess my one exception would be in cases where treason leads to death. And I'm also
terrorists.
okay with government assassinations that are, approved by Congress or whatever the protocol is. But as far as the everyday citizen, no. But am I going to lose tears for those, or lose sleep for the person who gets executed because they killed 10 people? No. But I also don't think it's solving anything.
And the fact of the matter is that the death penalty is going to be going away. We live in a world where things only get more progressive, and we are losing the culture wars. So the death penalty will be going away. That is me predicting the future right now with 100% accuracy.
I would predict that too. But luckily, because we now have a majority of Supreme Court that reads the Constitution, and instead of deciding what they want to say, it will have to be done by the legislator, it should be.
It will be a little bit slower in going away. So right now we're doing the grab bag question. Matt is reaching his hand to pick a random one out of the bag. And these questions come from the political compass test. We are selecting them randomly. We do one of these per episode. If you are interested in doing the political compass test yourself, go ahead and check it out on Google. Just search political compass. We do not fully support this test by any way, shape, or form. We actually think there's a lot of flaws with it, but it is fun regardless. And Matt, what is the question? Please read it aloud.
This is a fun one, Riley.
Oh, good deal.
Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal.
What do you think of that one, Matt?
Okay, so it says abortion when the woman's life is not threatened. So an abortion for...
Just a casual abortion.
Should always be illegal. I don't know how I answered this.
And the answers are disagree, agree, strongly disagree, and strongly agree, just for the listeners.
I think I would say disagree, but this is part of the problem with the test. I'm very much a pro-life person. I'm unapologetic about it. But the way they put this, abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be legal.
Is that legal or illegal?
Illegal.
Okay.
They put so much, they don't say should almost always be illegal. They say should always be illegal. And there's always going to be something. But if I was to answer this in the way I think they're intending for people to answer it, I would say agree. I would say abortion is pretty much the birth control that you do once you've gotten pregnant. It's your reproductive rights after you've already reproduced. It's something we call medical care, and it's really not any of that. So I was once a fetus, and I am a male, but I was also once a fetus, so I think I get a say in this, and I think I enjoy living, and I thank my mom for making that choice. So
I'm going to read the question again. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I strongly disagree with that. I am a huge supporter of abortion. I am okay personally with abortion all the way until the baby has come out of the woman's body and you can just chop its fucking head off. But
disgusting.
I am also okay with the libertarian idea of abortion, where if the baby can be kept alive outside the woman's womb. Is that what it is? Viability?
Yeah.
All right. If the baby can be kept alive outside the woman's womb, then go ahead and remove it as safely as possible. But I'm a huge supporter of abortion, and so I strongly disagree with this one. However, it doesn't matter to me anymore because I got a vasectomy, so it's not my problem.
That's pretty awesome. He just threw the slip in the bag because it didn't matter to him. That's something, that's one that I don't think that's really a good one, because we either have to have a whole show for it, or we just get to say, I'm pro-choice, I'm pro-life, and we'll get to it later. But anyway, we got other stuff to discuss. So
before we jump into our main discussion, please feel free to leave your comments, questions, emails, all sorts of stuff in the comment section and stuff like that. Let us know what you think about the stuff that we talk about. And Matt, do you want to introduce our main topic of the week? 39 minutes into the show, we actually saved ourselves some time for this one.
With that short grab bag question. Topic of the week is 2018 midterm elections and voting. There is so much to say about this. I could probably talk about this for a long time. I'll probably be doing most of the talking because this isn't your strong interest, right, Riley?
I'll mostly be asking you questions, probably.
That's okay, but it's very something I'm interested in. I think it's very important. The thing that's people are mainly gonna be watching for on Tuesday is going to be Congress, the Senate and the House.
When people say Congress, they're referring to both, right? The Congress, the
Usually,
House and the Senate. Okay.
some people aren't as educated, but it all depends. So anyway, right now, let's start by talking about the Senate. The Senate we just saw, and I said we're not going to bring up Kavanaugh, the confirmation anymore, but
if it's relevant.
I did say if it's relevant. And we just saw how the balance of power played out. Not just in that the vote was the exact same as the party lines, 51-49, with one senator on each side switching their vote, but it's also important because if you have a 51-49, you're pretty much always, not always, but usually going to have somebody from the other side joining. And so the question is, why is a majority important? And a majority is important because the committees, such as the Judicial Committee, is broken up by what percentage of Congress is Republican, what percentage of Congress is Democrat. So on the Judicial Committee, it has like 21 seats, I believe. And I'm not going to correct it if it's wrong because I'm just giving out what I believe. It came down to 11 votes to proceed with the Kavanaugh vote, 10 votes not to, and they were along party lines. Had it been 51-49, and if it becomes that, then what's the chances of Trump getting any future court pick through, which is the point of Congress, it's a check and a balance. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's kind of that's why it's so important. That's why it's important that people vote, but they don't understand. And so the current makeup of Congress is 51-49. I've been doing a lot of research.
That's the Senate, you mean?
Yes, thank you. Senate. I've been doing a lot of research on what they think is going to happen. As far as the Senate, Democrats are definitely on the defense. Pretty much every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is reelected for 6-year terms. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those. 9 Republicans are running for seats where the Republicans held them. The rest of those 33 are Democrats.
In the Senate?
In the Senate,
okay.
Yeah. So the Senates are playing defense.
You mean the Democrats are playing defense?
What did I say?
You said the Senate.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. No, the Democrats are playing defense. However, it's not impossible right now that they win the Senate.
They have to win pretty much all the seats?
No, not exactly. So the way it's set up right now is the Democrats have like 13 states where they're just declared safe. They have another 6 states where they're declared very likely. However, I was just reading an article today. One of the states is New Jersey. An article, it was on Fox News. It says New Jersey had been moved to a toss-up state because the senator there is involved in some sort of scandal.
Okay.
But then on 538, it said, is New Jersey really a toss-up? No. And so I figured, okay, it's probably some sort of bias on one of them. Right. And then I typed in New Jersey Senate, and there's all this stuff about saying that New Jersey's possibly up for grabs. So besides that, there's only 5 strong Democrat seats, and then 5 strong Republican seats, and there's 5 or 6 leaning Democrat, but I've looked at the polls and it's pretty much looking that way. So we're talking about maybe 6, 7, 8 seats that are going to make up the difference. Some of the big ones are, well, for one, we got Indiana. Joe Manchin right now is leading by 12 points. I don't know why they're considering it a toss-up. because he is leading by 12 points, but all the sites are reporting that as a toss-up. I think he did himself a big favor by voting for Kavanaugh because Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, another Democrat from a red state, she is now losing by, what was it? I believe, let's see, I had it written down somewhere, but her opponent is ahead of her by about 14 points. So she herself, though, did say it was something she thought was worth losing the election for, that vote. So Texas is considered a likely Republican. However, there have been questions about the person running against him. I've looked at the polls. I don't see it happening. However, all the stuff I say I see happening or don't see happening, I think we might be in for some surprises this year.
I think we will definitely be in for surprises this year. This is the first election since Trump was elected, and I think that it proves some. I think that the Democrats are going to try to come out strong this year.
I think they're going to try, but I got some crazy predictions coming up. So,
all right.
Tennessee is also leaning Republican, but not in the safe zone. And that would be a good one because it's a female running, and we could use more Republican females because the Democrat senators have a bunch, and we only have 6. So, sorry, the Republicans only have 6. The real actual toss-up ones, according to pretty much every site, is we got Nevada, where it's Dean Heller versus Jackie Brown, or as Trump calls her, Wacky Jackie. She's been ahead a lot of this race, but the last couple of weeks, he's come out between 6 and 1 points ahead of her. So it doesn't mean it's a guaranteed slam dunk for him, but the last couple of weeks, he has been ahead in the polls. My prediction as of right now would be a win for the incumbent Dean Heller, the Republican. Arizona, that's the seat Jeff Flake is leaving. It's going to be the first female senator ever from Arizona. It's Martha McSally versus Kyrsten Sinema. They're both U.S. representatives for Arizona, and they're both running for senator. Again, originally the polls have showed the Democrats leading in this race, which is a surprise because it's Arizona. But we even saw in the 2016 election, Arizona was kind of a toss-up. The Democrat has been leading in this one. The most recent polls show McSally, the Republican, leading. If I had to guess right now, I would say the Republican's going to win on that one. So I'll just record my predictions because we'll do a follow-up. And I'm just recording my predictions for these 6 toss-ups. But however, I would put more money on the Nevada one right now, going Republican, just because that Arizona race has been so tight. We have Montana. I'm not sure why they're even calling it a toss-up because it's incumbent. And by the way, an incumbent is a person who already holds the position. The incumbent is John Tester, a Democrat. And something I wanted to talk about during this is it's really weird how there's a lot of states that have a senator from each party. And also, I was going to talk about how I have a list of some governor seats that are toss-ups. But there's also some really weirdly strong Republican seats in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maryland. Very liberal states that it's basically saying the Republican governor is going to win or the Republican candidate's going to win. And Montana, for the presidential candidate, always goes for the Republican. But right now they have one Democrat, one Republican senator. I think they have one Democrat House of Representatives and a Democrat governor. So I would be really impressed if anybody could give feedback as to why they think some states are like that. Me and Riley, we're from Washington State. We have 2 Democrat senators. We have a Democrat governor. We have not had a Democrat governor or a Republican governor in about 40 years. So we're not used to being even a swing state in the midterms. So I would love to hear feedback from anybody who can tell us why they think certain states are different up ballot and down ballot, and how it can be so strong. One example is the Ohio Senate race is rated as a strong Democrat state, but the governor race, is a toss-up. And there's other ones up and down ballot where it's very different. And
Maybe governor is just more popular because more people know what it is, and so the Republicans come out to vote for the governor more.
well, Democrats are known as the ones who.
Or maybe the polling's just better for the governor information.
I don't. Well, if that was the case, like right now, there's a lot of New England and Northeast Republican governors already. But those states they all went to Clinton, and we all knew they were going to Clinton. There's no question about them.
That's the blue wall, right?
It's like pretty much, yeah. It's the blue wall, but that's where Chris Christie was governor. They have a lot of popular Republican governors there. And
maybe it's just because they've learned that liberal policies for cities are so shitty, and so like the years that the governors were up for election, they were just like, yeah, let's try a Republican governor this time.
I mean, I guess, but I've tried to look at it, and there's no clear answer for me. Anyway, so the other states, another one that's really weird to me is Indiana. Joe Donnelly. Actually, this one has become a lot closer. And actually, I looked at a recent poll today. Joe Donnelly has been leading. He's the Democrat incumbent. He's been leading most of this race. Right now, it shows he is up. The most recent poll has, sorry, not him, the Republican Mike Brown up by 4 points. However, if I had to guess on this one, I would guess it's going to be Democrat, just because that's how the polls have been running most of the time. I don't know if the most recent one was a fluke, but again, I'm predicting a lot of surprises in this one, or I'm anticipating. I'm not predicting them myself. Missouri, Claire McCaskill, her opponent, Josh Hawley is a Republican. Looks like she's going to be losing her seat. It's been pretty close, but he's pretty much been ahead. So I'm predicting a Republican victory there. And last one is Florida. Florida is one I was really hoping I could say would go red. The governor there is Rick Scott. He's a pretty popular guy, and he's somebody who was ahead in the polls most of the time. Now Bill Nelson, who's the incumbent Democrat senator, looks to be ahead in the polls. I would predict that state's probably going to go to the Democrats.
Well, Florida also, it seems like the interest of that state has gone Democrat just since the shooting, and that shooting was different from all the other shootings because the victims of the shooting, quote unquote, were strong political advocates after the shooting.
They were.
We've all seen those kids all over the news, and so it. There's a lot of older people in Florida. You always hear that it's the retirement state, and I'm sure that they've held on to their conservative values. But I have no doubt that those kids in that shooting have turned that state a little bit blue.
And they have made official endorsements, something I think we should do with the podcast, but Riley doesn't want to. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. I do, yeah. I didn't expect Florida to go for Trump, and it did. Even like I did, I'm a dork. I pull up a bunch of different maps and I look at different things. I never thought Florida was going to go for Trump, and it did.
Well, people didn't want to vote for Hillary. It wasn't that Trump was a good candidate. It was that Hillary was a shitty one.
In any case, he won. So he won the state is my point there.
Yeah.
So, and it was just something I wasn't expecting, even though like the last 3 or 4 governors have been Republicans. Also, the governor race is really popular in Florida because of the Parkland shooting, and also the Democrats have a black guy running for governor, and I don't like to throw out black guy or woman a lot. I don't like to put people into groups, but for a lot of these things, it can really make the difference because there have been very few black governors. Senate, Congress is
Well, that
having
one
more
that's
and
going
more.
on with Georgia, where it's the black woman who's running against the guy, and that you hear about that one on the news a lot because it will be the
Yes.
first time a black woman has been governor. And I know that you and I don't put a whole lot of value into race or sex, gender, whatever you want to refer to it as. But there are a lot of people who do put a lot of value in that, even if the person's a terrible candidate. They think that having what's it called, diversity is important.
I think that's just so like that's like forced diversity. What you talked about.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm not a fan of forced
why
diversity
not vote
either.
for who's the best for the job? Like,
yeah, and it's such a straight white male thing to say.
Well, it is, but you know what? What's interesting is a lot of these safe Democrat seats are running against black Republicans, and I'm like, we could diversify the whole thing if people would just vote for the opposite. But they're in such safe Democrat states that it's most likely not going to happen. Such as New York was one of them. Person running against Kristen Gillibrand, who is my least favorite senator. Anyway,
so can I go ahead and ask you some questions?
Yes.
Let me see here. Who the Kavanaugh being inducted, right? Is that the right word?
Confirmed.
Confirmed. Okay, Kavanaugh being confirmed. Do you think that helped the Democrats, or do you think it helped the Republicans?
I think for the Senate, it's helping the Republicans because, again, for the Senate, the Democrats are on defense. They have a lot of states up for grabs.
And you said it helped the Republicans?
It's helping the Republicans because of the states that are Republican already. Let's see, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that were Republican. 5 of them are safe. 2 of them are very likely to continue to be, and then 2 of them are the toss-ups. So.
And do you think it had any effect on the House or the governors? Do you think it had any effect on either the party as a whole?
So yeah, I'll get to that. So for we can see that Claire McCaskill from Missouri, she's currently losing in the polls. Nevada, Dean Heller, nobody expected him to really. They thought that was going to be the one Republican seat that was for sure a loss. He's rising back up. Then again, he voted in favor of it. Heidi Heitkamp, like I said. So I think as far as the Senate goes, just because of how it's lined up this year, I think it helped them. Had it been a different year, it could have turned out different. And in general, I think it's helping the Democrats because I think confirming Kavanaugh wasn't a popular decision. And that's why I think the House... I made a prediction for the Senate. My prediction is it's going to end up being 53 to 47 Republican. That means they're going to be netting 2. If I had to make a prediction after that, it would be 54-46. And then my third prediction would be 52-48. So I think it's going to be 54 to 52 votes for Republican. Let's see if I'm going to be way off. There is a small chance. Like I said, the Democrats could take the Senate, but even the Democrats have pretty much accepted that it's probably not going to happen. But right now, my prediction is 52 to about 54 seats for the Republicans, and then the rest for the Democrats.
So you think that the Republicans will maintain control over the Senate?
Yeah, and according to 538, it says they have a 5 and 6 chance of maintaining the Senate.
You think the Democrats will take over the House?
Well, so I've done a couple of projections for the House, and what I came up with was, I don't even have it here, but I came up with 250. So there's 435 members of the House, and to have control, you have to have 218, and there is no tiebreaker. So if it was 50-50 in the Senate, the vice president breaks the tie. There's no tiebreaker. But then again, the chances of a tie with 435 is a lot less. Oh, wait, that's actually because it ends in an odd number, so there is no chance of it. But you have to have 218. The prediction I came up with, just by going through and kind of looking at patterns of how the state did in terms of the presidential election and how it did the last time for the House of Representatives, because the House is every 2 years, all 435 of them get reelected. My prediction came out to be 220 for the Republicans, 215 for the Democrats. However, I don't think that's super accurate because if I had to put money on it, I would say the Democrats are probably going to win the House back, but not necessarily. The Republicans could hold on to it. My prediction could be somewhat right, or it could be right but switch the parties. I think what we're definitely going to see is the current House breakup is 193 Democrat, 235 Republican. I definitely think we're going to see a much closer margin. It's not like we're going to have 235 Democrats and 193 Republicans. It's not going to switch like that. We're going to have a much narrower gap either way. Either way, the Democrats are going to net seats. So it's going to be a win for them in that way. As far as the Senate, it could go either way, but most people are predicting Republicans are going to gain seats. And then you're asking about the governors. Currently, it's 19 Democrats and then one independent and then 30.
That's Bernie Sanders.
No,
he's not a governor.
No, it's the governor of Alaska who he dropped out he decided in Alaska they run on tickets. So he decided that he would have a better chance of defending or beating Kevin Parnell, who is the Republican incumbent who took over after Sarah Palin left. And he figured he'd have a better chance if he ran with a Democrat on his ticket, and they ended up winning. Well, what happened this time around is 3 weeks before election time, the lieutenant governor, who's a Democrat, said something racist or offensive, so he dropped out of the race, and now there's somebody else in Alaska. So in any case, Alaska's projected to go red, but we're not going to have that one-off now, because I always usually used to consider him a Republican because that's what he ran as, but he's actually supporting the Democrat now. But anyway, it's been about 20 versus 30. They're predicting now it's going to be more like 26 versus 24. But I haven't paid as much attention to that because it's not as relevant. There's no benefit to whatever party has more seats. But in general, over the past few years, there have been more Republican governors. So
my next thing I wanted to bring up is that as we learned from the 2016 election is that the polls are worthless, and I am a voting person in this county or in this district, which is a important district because, as you said, the Dino Rossi Kim Schreier is a toss-up that the nation is watching, and I've never been polled in my entire life, so we know that the polls are pretty much worthless.
Well, I was polled here, or I was polled when I was working in this city. Or working in this district that we're in, I got pulled from, it called and did an automated message, but I don't live in this district like you do, so yeah. And I won't mention which one I live in.
Yeah.
Regardless to say it's a.
Well, I'm just saying that it's a small district. There's not a whole lot of people here, and you figure if they've done all this polling, they would have pretty much gotten everyone who's a registered voter by now.
Well,
and I mean, I have 4 registered voters in my apartment, and none of them have been asked about polls, you know. So can we really rely on polling all that much?
Well,
my main question here is, do you think that we'll see some major surprises here? Do you think that there's a chance of like a massive blue wave that the polls aren't seeing, or a massive red wave that the
I do, and the thing is, right now, like I think it could go either way. Like, I think we could be really surprised, and because generally what happens is after a president is elected, the other party will either take control or gain more control of Congress. But Trump is just freaking full of surprises, and he's been rallying around the country, and every time he goes to a spot, not every time, okay, I take that back, but a lot of the times he goes to a spot, and all of a sudden, like, the person's poll numbers will jump. But again, 2016 taught us we can't trust polls. But in the same time, for us who are into politics, it's kind of the only fun thing we can do in the meantime is look at what's going on and predict it. Mm-hmm. And as far as Washington District 8, which is one of the top 10 that are up for grabs in 2018, the September polls were showing that Schreier was ahead by about 1 or 2 points, and that was based on about 500 collected, a sample of about 500. I think they put the margin of error at about 4.5. This recent one was done in the It was done October 4th through 9th, and it had Rossi at 10 points ahead. And that was out of 400 votes, and it said the margin of error was 5, which that still puts them 5 ahead of the margin of error. However, again, can we trust these polls? No, and that's the only one time I saw that one. It's not like I've been seeing a lot of polls saying Rossi's going to win. So the thing is, like, we can talk about this till we turn blue in the face. The poll that matters the most is the one that people do on their ballots and turn in on or by November 6th. Mm-hmm. And then that's, I mean, I have the day off. I'm going to be in front of the TV watching the results come in, just like I did in 2016. And because now I used to work at a job where I worked at night, so I missed all the elections before that. But now I have more flexibility, and I will be at home watching that.
Another thing, I just kind of a statement. My libertarian news source is Reason.com. I'm a big fan of that website and that magazine. They've been talking about how libertarians are running across the country. Unfortunately, there were no libertarians on my ballot. But in places where libertarians are running, they're actually not doing too bad, and the polls are not representing them at all. They represent them as independent or other, or they don't even poll for them. They are only polling for a Republican, Democrat, but in the polls that they are showing up in, they're doing significantly better than expected. So that would be cool if there was a surprise libertarian candidate who won.
Well, let me tell you something about that. 538, I'm really back and forth on because one, the guy.
They're easier to read than Real Clear Politics.
They are, and I love 270 to win because it lets you maneuver your own map and whatnot, and that's how I've repeatedly come up with 53 to 47. And I also ran a simulator. It lets you do a house simulator, and it takes like all the guaranteed ones and populates those, and then it will randomly populate them based off of the percentage, and it'll show you what a map might end up looking like. And I did it for the 2016 presidential election, and it showed what it might end up looking like. And the one that I came up with, it like had 221 for the Republicans, so it was pretty close to what I projected. But yeah, I mean, you can't trust them, but something with 538 is they put a lot of detail into it. Now, that detail has kind of backfired on them before. I mean, I respect Nate Silver and the fact that the 2008 presidential election, he predicted 48 out of 50 states. 2012, he predicted all 50 states. But, I mean, then from there, I mean, we're living in different times. So
yeah,
we could see a big surprise either way. I
don't know. I found out there's a lot of voters lying on the polls because they didn't want to say they were voting for Trump, even though they were.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of, and what does that say about our society when you are afraid to tell the pollster or the automated person on the phone who you're voting for? Like, it really shows like how divided we are and how divided Trump's presidency has made us, because people couldn't even tell the truth that they were going to vote for him.
It was all the men who their wives were listening in the background, and they were like, I'm voting for Hillary. Let me see. 2 more questions for you because we're getting low on time. What do you think about what's happening in Georgia, where they are the voting rights are attacking Native Americans because Native Americans live in rural areas where they can only have P.O. boxes as their addresses because getting a real address is a really long and complicated process. And Native Americans tend to vote Democrat. And also just voter ID laws in general. What are your thoughts on what's going down in Georgia, which is one of the competitive states? I don't know if Georgia's traditionally red or blue, but it's the one where that black woman is.
It's traditionally red. The most recent I looked at is he's up by 2%, and okay. The thing has him as solid. It has Georgia as solid.
Right.
From what I've read, I haven't investigated that a whole lot. As far as voter IDs go, let me say to everybody that voter fraud does exist, and it can exist, and you should have to have an ID. You need an ID to borrow books from the library. It's not unreasonable to say have an ID if you go to the ballot. Most people argue that it's the Republicans' way of keeping...
But you don't think... I just want to make sure you're on the right path with the audience. You don't think it's to the extreme that Trump thinks it is, right? You don't think that 3 million... Pretty much he blames everyone. Like, Hillary won the popular vote, and he blames that everyone who she got over on the popular vote were all fraudulent votes. Do you believe that?
I believe there were probably some, but I don't believe there were
Not to the extent that he thinks.
Not to the extent that he thinks.
Like, do you think it's such a significant issue that it's something that needs to be done about, or do you think it's within reasonable doubt we can just
I think
let
making
it go?
sure the proper people vote is always important, because as we saw in 2004 when Dino Rossi ran against Christine Gregoire, he won 3 recounts, and when she won the 4th, they certified the results. And he argued to the courts, I don't think dead people are felons. Under the law, currently, their votes shouldn't be counted because they're not considered eligible voters. He argued that to the court, and the court said no more recounts, and they certified Christine Gregoire as the governor. He got really screwed on that one. So
what do you think about what's going on in Georgia?
So there are situations. Well, my point is, there's situations where it matters. From what I've read, what's going on in Georgia, and one thing you didn't tell me, and maybe it's that you don't know, the person that the black lady who's running for the Democrat is running against is the state auditor.
Yeah,
he's the guy who's in charge of all of this.
Yeah.
So he's basically, if what they're saying is true, he's fudging the numbers in his favor.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that voter ID laws can't be used wrong. I'm not saying there isn't some politician out there, like what you said, they minor differences on the ID, like something's not hyphenated. No, that's absolutely ridiculous. But you should have something with your picture and your name on it, even if it's an employee badge, when you go to vote. To me, that's not unreasonable. But people say, like, it affects the poor, they can't get it. Well, do something to where the poor can be properly identified when voting. I'm not saying poor or black people should be able to vote. If we have to do something to make it easier, that's fine. But we should also make sure the right people are voting, and that people are only voting once, not getting back in line for their friends they know aren't going to be voting, things like that, or whatever extreme could be. It can happen, and because it can happen, it does happen. So
I can't really have a strong stance on that because I live in a state where it's mail-in voting and not going to the polls. Is that what they're called? The polls, when you actually go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're 100% absentee.
As long as I've been able to vote, it's always mail-in voting. So I've never experienced what voting is like in other states. So I really can't comment too much on voter ID laws and stuff. I mean, the only confirmation that we have is that you have to sign the ballot before you send it in.
Yeah,
which
but
it's easy to forge a signature.
I mean, it's easy to forge a signature, and you can, some people get their family members, like these people who don't care to vote, they then will let other people fill out their ballots in a way in a way you can say they're consenting to let the other person dictate their opinion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is, in a way, voter fraud. I don't know where you draw the line, but the situation in Georgia, all I can hope for is that the right person wins based on the process not being rigged. I haven't investigated it enough to say which side's right, but from the little bits I've read, it seems like something fishy might be going on the Republican side.
And my last question for you is: do you think it's more important to have a candidate who's willing to reach across the aisle, or do you think it's more important that we have Republican people who win? Who do you want to win?
Well, people who reach across the aisle are people. I mean, we have some of those in Congress right now. Until recently, we had John McCain. Oh, one thing I was going to mention is that there are 2 special elections in the Senate. One in Michigan, where they're both projected to go blue. So it means there's 2 people running at once because the other senator vacated their seat earlier, and so they have to rerun. Arizona's not one because their law allows the person to fill the seat until then. So a couple other things just kind of throwing things up in the air there.
But for you personally, would you rather have Republicans
would I rather have?
Well,
I would rather have people that represent my values. But there's some things where it's not a matter of values; it's a matter of budget or whatnot, or it's just a matter of common sense, and you need those people to reach across the aisle. But we just don't live in a time where obviously I'm a big fan of the Supreme Court. I've talked about it a lot. If you look back at everybody who was nominated to the Supreme Court before George Bush was president, it was overwhelming amounts. Maybe it was usually about 0 to 20 senators who voted against them, but usually more like 0 to 10. it'd be a vote of like 85 to 12 or something. Ever since then, it's been pretty much across party lines, and I think that's real concerning because the litmus test should be, can this person define the law, what's in the Constitution? And we're so divided right now that we can't do that. So, I mean, in reality, I would like us, I'd like us all to be one people and, be able to get along however things are, but that's just not how the world is right now. And so I am hoping for a Republican victory, at least in the Senate. In my opinion, the Senate's more important. Other people have different opinions for different reasons. We're not going to get into that because we're at an hour and 15. But
so do you have a final word for this?
My final word is, I think if I had to put money on it, the Republicans are going to have between 52 to 54 votes for the Senate. And I would say if I had to put money on it, Democrats will take back the House, but a very slight margin, and a very slight margin either way. So, but I'm excited. My final word is that I'm excited to see.
Good deal.
To tell you that.
My final word is something I heard recently on the Reason podcast. It's something I've already told you, Matt, and I think it's a beautiful thing to say. Don't reelect anyone.
That is just awful policy. I completely am against term limits for Congress, and the reason is because I think instead of term limits, you should have more competitive primaries. That way, if you have a really good person in Congress and they've been doing you well for years, keep them. But otherwise, you don't owe anything to that person, and the primaries can get rid of them. So there's no benefit in not re-electing anyone. So,
like I said, my final word, don't re-elect anyone.
Oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to interrupt your... Okay, well...
Thank you for listening to our show. Appreciate you sticking around for an hour, 16 minutes. Let me see. Please comment, subscribe, like, follow, all that kind of stuff. We love your comments. What is this? Email, yes, our email. Thank you for reminding me, Matt, with your hand signatures, your sign language. Our email is quadrant4politics@gmail.com. I am checking it on a regular basis. And please share this with your friends. We'd appreciate it. Anything else to add in?
Just before we say goodbye, if this wasn't your favorite episode because you don't care about the makeup of Congress and you want us to get back to ideas, that's fine, because we're going to get back to ideas next week, probably talking a little bit about gun control.
And probably discussing a little bit about who won the election. That'll be fun.
That will be a follow-up, yes.
Cool. All right. Thanks for watching. See you later.